Hello and welcome to Renegade Files, your top secret report on paranormal events, unsolved mysteries, and alternative cultural analysis. I'm your host, Lex Gordon, coming to you from the Jungle Villa Outpost, deep in the uncharted tropics. This is Renegade Files episode 112, Unscripted From The Edge, Epstein Docs, Nancy Guthrie, and Bad Bunny. On this episode, I plug into the crazy world of some current events in a genre we can now call the conspiracy theorists were right. As the title states, this episode is unscripted and captured in real time, with little or no edits, so forgive some pauses, bumps, and me opening some browser tabs. This is our chance to connect and analyze some hot topics on the current landscape so we can stay sane together and move on from this point in history with, if we're lucky, some hope for the future. And, if nothing else, the fond memories of the olden times when thinking and thriving were valued. Now, yes, I have done a huge amount of research for this episode. I just haven't written it all out into an organized narrative flow, which is fine because there's too much here to do that. So just come along with me now as I go back through what I've found and we will dig into it together. Welcome to Renegade Files. Let's get right into it. So first up are the Epstein files. Okay, so yes, newly circulated. Okay, so there's the bumps we're talking about. Newly circulating Epstein-related materials and photos reignited public focus on the network question rather than the individual scandal. So this is the way the narrative is sort of shifting now. It's moving away from Epstein as the lone operator toward Epstein as access broker inside the power elite ecosystem. Okay, that's all fine and well, and that may be a very sort of, maybe accurate way to look at what's going on. There's a lot to talk about here, and we are going to do it, but let's just take some steps as we get into it, right? So the key angles that they're talking about now are analyzing this sort of document dump, if you could even call it documents, but 3 million pages of information that the Department of Justice has sort of put up on their website. Anyone can go there and look at them. Now, that being said, they could not have made it harder to go through or more tedious. So your options are either download all 3 million pages of information or go through them one page at a time. Okay, so let me clarify exactly how this looks and how it works. When I say pages of information, what is there are 3 million PDFs. No exaggerate. 3 million individual PDFs. Some of them are photographs. In fact, a lot of them are photographs of Jeffrey Epstein's property and all the stuff inside. And we'll get into a little bit of that. But basically it seems that were taken after he was arrested and incarcerated. So these are photographs of his empty apartment in New York, his house here, his ranch there, whatever. And then there's, in the same methodology, and this just goes from top to bottom, page 1, 100 things, page 2, 100 things, however many are on each page, I don't really remember. But they're all numbered sequentially, and they just sort of run on ad nauseum to the tune of 3 million of them. And the way that you look at them is you are on the DOJ website. If you choose to not download all 3 million of them onto your computer or device or whatever, you can look at them there. But when you click on one of those PDFs, it opens up whatever that PDF is of in another window. Okay. And so then you can look at it. And in a lot of cases, it's Department of Justice photographs. A lot of it is photographs of photographs. So it's a photograph of a photograph Epstein had in his house or his apartment or whatever. And so once you look at it and you say, okay, that's good and well, then you close that if you choose, or save it, or whatever whatever you're doing with it, analyze it. And then when you go back, you have to remember what the number was that you just looked at, so that you can go to the next one without skipping one if it's your intention to look at all of them, or without opening up the one you just did, or 1-3 back. And it becomes very cumbersome because all that's there are little hot links of the names of the PDFs, and they're individual, and there's 3 million of them. So there's your Epstein files, right? And then in that information are PDFs of email exchanges of one side, another side, whatever. It's searchable, so you can go to a certain part of the website and search for something. But by their own admission and in their own language, the search function is very limited, I think they call it. Basically because what are you searching? Are you searching for text in a PDF that the search browser can't read? Yes. So you can't look up, let's say, like Bill Gates and then find all the stuff on Bill Gates. It's the functionality of the document dump is horrifying. They could learn a lot from WikiLeaks. Okay. Anyway, so that's the starting point for, at least for this part of the information we're going to look at in this episode. Okay. So, but have no fear. Other people have gone through tons of it. So have I. There are cherry-picked sort of places you can go to gather information that other people have sort of done that legwork of. So it's not the end of the world. At the same time, though, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But that is what we have, and that's how it works. So that's a starting point of what's been done. Now, couple other things. What's in there? Well, flight logs, social photos, photos of his property, event attendance records. This raises questions about his intelligence community, proximity, financial sector relationships, philanthropy as access infrastructure. This is very, very high level shenanigans, essentially, is what this 3 million page document dump sort of leans toward or reveals in a cumbersome way. So here's what's a little different about all of this now, though. This comes at a point when public trust in institutions is far lower than it was the first time Epstein hit the news. We sort of believed what they said, and we'll get into some of those, some of that backpedaling, right? So now people assume that information suppression exists, narrative management is real, AI enhancement and image analysis tools allow us to sort of dig deep and identify things, but at the same time, old photos can be changed, backgrounds can be moved around, and you can't tell. So there's no way to know, with our current level of paranoia about not believing anything we see, if anything in here at all is real. That's where we start from. It's a problem. It's a problem when doing research, because you have in the back of your mind that all of this could be fake. Not saying that it is, but for us, as we look through it, think less in terms of scandal and more in terms of power mapping and leverage systems. So the real question is, was Epstein an individual criminal, or was he a node in a larger infrastructure of influence? Okay. This is a different way to look at this. Everyone knows that he was kind of a nefarious character, a criminal, a bad guy, a pedo, like whatever your phrasing is. He certainly checked a lot of boxes, but the reality is that he's just the figurehead that they hung out to dry, almost. Is he the worst guy in the room? Probably not, right? In those rooms, all right? I'm not defending him. But what this document dump, if you do take the insane time to go through it, reveals is that he was just one guy. He was sort of the middleman, and who do you arrest? The drug dealer or the drug addict or the drug supplier? Right? He's just one of those guys in this insane thing. And you know what? A lot of it is very disturbing and a lot of it is very sad. And it's like, I'm not going to go into it here. You can find that in other places. We're taking the high level approach to find out who's there, what's going on, what's the situation there. It's scandalous, to say the least. Okay. So there's a lot going on here. There's a suspicious death. There's emerging sort of ideas of his personal network, financial relationships, inconsistencies in this timeline, a flash of a person going by in a photograph where we were told previously that no one had gone into his jail cell. They're like all of that kind of thing that throws shade on this official narrative. This would be the section where I'm going to go dig through a little bit of my information and the aforementioned unscripted version of our performance tonight. So let's do that. Okay, so we talked about the core shift in narrative that we're seeing rolled out. Epstein is not really the individual offender in this. It's the refocus on the network hub. So political records, civil filings, and we'll get into it, man. There's crazy stuff you may or may not have heard of. Released documents over the past several years, and then what we have now. So this guy was involved in political power, finance, intelligence agents, environments, elite philanthropy, global social networks, and who intersected with that ecosystem and how, right? That becomes a question. So we know the key political figures. Bill Clinton appeared on Epstein flight logs multiple times, 25 times maybe, if I remember correctly, maybe more. This is publicly reported. That's something that I already knew. I had already found that out through other research in the past, and I'm certain I've actually mentioned it. He has stated trips where his Clinton Foundation related travel. He denied visiting the island. That wasn't true. No criminal charges have been applied to any of the Clintons in this case. The implication is that proximity of global political fundraising and elite donor networks that involve the sitting president with this network of, international criminals, for lack of a better word, it raises serious questions. I think that's the reason that anyone's even talking about this. So then we have our current president, Donald Trump, who socialized with Epstein in Palm Beach and New York circles in the 90s and early 2000s. There's some social photos of those two going around. Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago after some alleged incident that he widely reported that the guy was kind of a bad guy in his words. And then it sort of comes out that, well, it's possible that those two were buddy-buddy and that the reason he threw Epstein under the bus and had his DOJ arrest him is because there was a real estate deal that fell out between the two. Now, I don't know. Without defending either of them, I would say that that's just broad speculation. If Trump had everyone arrested who he had a disagreement with in a real estate deal, that's sort of his business for his whole life. There would be a long list. I don't know if that's really the case. I don't know that it's not. One of the most legally impacted and high-profile figures is Prince Andrew. I guess I should say the former Prince Andrew, who settled a civil lawsuit with Virginia Guthrie in 2022. He applied no admission of guilt, but he did give her a huge payout to have her quit squawking about him and go away. Now, he was withdrawn from his royal duties, and that case became a very publicly documented elite association that did have some early on consequences. He was sort of the poster boy for rich guy did bad, hang him out to dry, punish him with money, strip him of his royal duties. And that leads us into Virginia Guthrie, who was one of the earliest to sort of come forward and go on and on about Epstein and what happened there. And there were pictures of her with Prince Andrew, and there was this debate about whether it was fake or not. Very, very famous photograph, Ghislaine Maxwell smiling in the background. And Virginia Guthrie, actually, with the biggest smile on her face, too. It wasn't like she was bound and gagged. I'm not saying she deserved what happened to her there. She was young, impressionable, but when I say young, a teenager girl on an island with a prince and a huge smile. I'm not blaming the victim here. I'm just saying that all these things come with context and subtlety, and she certainly didn't deserve what happened to her, and nor did anyone who was a victim in this situation. So, that being the case, Virginia Guthrie, very vocal, very critical, very sort of the ringleader, whistleblower of the early days of the Epstein case, no doubt about it. On the news, on the podcasts, on television shows, at protests, at the Capitol, at hearings, the ringleader of basically calling him out for what he was and what he did, and everyone involved. During that time, so the 2020s, early 2020s, right? She made a point of saying, P.S. I'm not suicidal. I'm perfectly healthy. I have a happy life. I love my family. The last thing I would do is take my life, which is a gift from God, and like the whole, like she was very animate about that, and nonetheless, actually did commit suicide when she was, I believe, 41. Let me just scroll down here, and that wasn't too long ago. Virginia Guthrie, one of the most prominent Epstein accusers, died by suicide in April 2025 at age 41, according to her family and police. And that's from Reuters. Authorities say no foul play was suspected, though her death marked a major turning point in the public narrative. She had been a central figure of accusing Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell of trafficking her, filed a high-profile civil lawsuit against Prince Andrew, reached a settlement with him in 2022. Her family and supporters describe her as a key voice demanding accountability for a global trafficking network. Ongoing developments, recently released emails, support authenticity of the famous photo of her with Prince Andrew, reinforce elements of her testimony, led family members to say the new evidence vindicates her claims. Maxwell's own emails reportedly acknowledged the photo and meeting, contradicting Maxwell's earlier denials. Her death not only doesn't stop or close the story, it intensifies the scrutiny. Now, let me throw you another little curveball here that you may not have thought, or that you may not have realized or known or thought of. Virginia Guthrie was in her sort of world tour of calling out Epstein. This is before she died by suicide at the age of 41, after saying for years that she would never do that. One of the first high-profile interviews that she conducted was with, guess who? Savannah Guthrie, whose mother recently kidnapped 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, which happened February 1st, I guess, so just 10 days ago, right when all of this stuff dropped. Okay? It's a little much. It's a little shocking when you realize it. Now, not only that, and I don't have that information in front of me, but Savannah, let me just see if I can find it. Okay, so here we go. Nancy Guthrie, mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, was kidnapped on Saturday, authorities believe. Search for her. A very bizarre kind of like TMZ got a ransom note that they wanted some Bitcoin. I'm not sure. If you follow the story, then you know all of that. So the incident comes amid the Justice Department releasing files related to the late convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein. When news of Nancy's disappearance broke, it also put the spotlight on Savannah and her personal life. She had interviewed Epstein accusers for NBC News. Now a document from the latest has drawn another interesting connection between Guthrie and Epstein. Savannah Guthrie and her actions weren't maybe directly, but she's married to Michael Feldman, who helped find the Glover or found the Glover Park Group in 2001. This was a public relations firm based out of DC, and during its time, he helped the likes of Bill Clinton and Al Gore with public relations. The group is mentioned in the documents linked to Epstein. One file mentions a communication involving Larry Summers, where it is suggested that Epstein spoke to someone at the Glover Park Group who has helped Clinton. Okay, so, but it is known that Savannah Guthrie is married to Michael Feldman, who started the Glover Park Group 2001, and that group was a PR firm for many, among them Bill Clinton, and maybe did some damage control. So you see what I mean? These kind of threads sort of come about. Is it completely a coincidence that her mother was kidnapped when her husband had his hand in doing damage control for some of the people that are in this mess, for lack of a better word? Okay, it's causality doesn't always mean correlation doesn't always mean causality. Yes, we do know that. But all I'm saying is when you start looking into these things, you always find these sort of connections. So anyway, moving back to our situation here, we have high profile names that are in this document dump. You know what? You know who it is? It's all the usual suspects. It's all the A-listers and B-listers. It's all the people that you might imagine. There's weird stuff in there, and just from my memory of going through it, I'll give you a few little beauties, okay? One of them is Bill Gates, and this correspondence between him and Epstein, where Epstein is very impressed that Bill Gates would give his wife unknowingly to her antibiotics by slipping them into her food and drinks after he contracted some STD while he was carousing around on the foundation sort of auspices in some country. So he collected a STD for himself, and afraid of giving it to his wife, instead dosed her without her knowledge of by giving her antibiotics on the sly. And he had sort of jokingly mentioned that to Epstein, and that's revealed in this document dump, and both of them thought that was just the funniest thing ever. Okay, so that's just one thing that's in there. The other thing in there that's drawn a lot of attention is all of these shady emails between allegedly Deepak Chopra and Epstein. So those include things like Deepak Chopra saying God is imaginary, but pretty girls are real, or to some such thing. Okay, and then a whole lot more of nefarious and way worse kind of things that you wouldn't expect from the holier-than-thou, self-righteous guru to the stars that Deepak Chopra was held up as being. And there's no reason to go through all the craziness. However, it does sort of draw this line. Now there's other things like this prince who had lunch with the guy and then backpedaled and said, "Oh, I didn't know who he was. I was just having lunch on the island." You just went there for lunch. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. Now that brings up the other narrative that we're seeing in the mainstream now, and that is that association does not equal criminal activity, right? That's the new spin that everyone's sort of, that's the life raft that all these A-listers and political elite and Hollywood sort of white wolf types are jumping onto, which is this admission of innocence. I didn't know what was going on there. I just went to the guy's island, for a vacation, I didn't know who he was. I met him at a party and he invited me to his island. I was like, heck yeah, man. I went there and did whatever. It's there. And then give me a break with all that. Okay. I don't know. If you end up on an island, and a lot of those are after he had already once been arrested for child trafficking or some sketchy thing. So anyway, that's part of what's here. Then there's another layer. The next layer involves the release and the state of these documents. And I will say, just as a quick aside, after going through far too many of these PDFs and many of them photographs, I really got the impression that Epstein, on the surface, and this is neither here nor there, but just my sort of what I gathered by looking at a lot of those photographs, is that this is a guy who has tons and tons of money, but no taste. These places are just weird. It's like someone else built them in the past and he's just sort of passing through. None of them really look lived in. None of the spaces really look like home. It's very odd. And maybe that's a certain level of billionaire that lives on the whole planet Earth. And I really don't understand what your apartment in New York looks like. But what it looks like is a bunch of like leopard skin covered dining room chairs and then mid-century leather chaise lounges and every little piece of something that probably costs millions of dollars but looks like 10 cents type of art. I don't know. That's just, you can go through there and look through them yourself and see what you think. But by and large, it just looks like some tasteless guy with no style who's just sort of built up a apartment and put a bunch of junk in there so he can get in the door and be out of the snow. Very weird. Very weird. And yes, of course, you have a lot of the whole, like, a naked bust of a woman and a, picture of a painting of a girl without a top, and it's just all the stuff that you may imagine, but none of it really good. I don't know. Just maybe I was going dizzy from looking at so much of it. However, let's get back to this idea of the method and the state of the information that we get. So this brings us to a character that many of you may know, Dan Bongino. He's a very famous conservative pundit. He had a radio talk show. He was a law enforcement officer in his early career. I guess he worked for the Secret Service for quite a while, 99 to 2011. He unsuccessfully ran for Congress 3 times, but he did end up being appointed by Trump to be the next director or deputy director of the FBI. He took that office on March 17th, concluded it on March 14th. So, and this would have been, 2025, I guess, 2025 to 2026. He held that duty. Okay, now, the important thing to know about Dan Bongino, if you don't, is that he was very vocal for a very long time, raising in his civilian capacity as a talk show host, right? Making a huge deal out of transparency for the Epstein files. Why doesn't Biden release them? If Biden's not in them, why can't we see? Like he made a career out of it. And when we were leading up to the point where it seemed like maybe he was going to be the deputy director, he was on the short list for the FBI. It was like, man, now's your chance. You've been railing about this forever. You're going to get in there. Let us see the Epstein files. And everyone was like, gun-ho, go do it. He gets in there, and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino do that famous, what was it, little interview where they both look like deers in a headlights where snipers have rifles on them as they're answering these questions. And they're like, yeah, no, there's nothing there. No, nothing there. And it seems incredibly forced and stilted and fake, to be perfectly honest. Go back and watch it. The point is that between the time that Bongino made a career on railing about the fact that we need transparency and disclosure and let us see the Epstein files, and we all know that all the crooked elites are in there and Biden's covering it up. Trump gets in there, puts Bongino in the position of being able to do exactly that, and immediately, and this is not my opinion, this is public record, Bongino heads an initiative which hires multiple people, involves an enormous amount of training and sort of action on the ground I'm getting ahead of myself, okay. Okay, so before that, and I'll come back to it. So okay, leading up to it, he pounds his fist, he makes okay, we know his position. He gets in there. We see him with Kash Patel months later, or within a few, very short term. And if you recall, what do they say? What does he say? What does Dan Bongino say specifically? Man, there's nothing there. You guys, I'm sorry. You all got worked up, and I was part of the problem. I worked you up. There's nothing in there. I've looked at it. Epstein killed himself, and he was a bad guy, and that's it. There's nothing really to look at. There's nothing in the files. And everyone's like, whoa, really? And then that's when we have the DOJ coming out and saying there isn't anything. If you recall, this wasn't too long ago. No, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in there. And you're like, wait a minute. I thought there was you held up all those binders on the press conferences, and the day is coming when we're going to release it. Look, here's a binder of it. There's 3 million pages. It wouldn't fit in any binder. Okay, but whatever the case may be, they made a big show of we're going to show you. Then they put him in there and he says, there's really nothing there. There's nothing to show. And then what does he do? Back to my previous point where I got ahead of myself. He creates a task force. And what do? They go through and systematically redact and censor anything of value in there. I know, because I've looked. Anytime there's a binder with someone's name, it's a little black thing. And anytime there's an email, it's blah, 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 black, black, black. And the stuff that's remaining, the things that are allowed for you to read, in my estimation, my very humble amateur opinion, are the people that they don't care if they get hung out to dry. Right? Why does the FBI and the DOJ care about Deepak Chopra? They don't. He's an entertainer. He's a guru. Now, if you've ever read some of his books and gotten some value from them, I'm not saying that the guy is valueless. All right? He's obviously aware and sort of enlightened to a certain degree. Doesn't mean he's an angel. We see it all the time. But the fact is, those names that are left in there are just the dead wood clearing that they're going to let us hang out to dry. And really and honestly, what comes from all this, you and I both know, probably nothing. What's going to happen to these guys that are making all these disgusting sexual innuendos about underage people, and they're frolicking around and they're saying meet me here and bring the whatever, and it's all coded? Nothing, probably nothing. Not a single criminal case has been brought on any of them ever in relation to it, has it? No. So the only person that's been sued is this Prince Andrew, who they slapped him on the wrist and he bought his way out of it. End of story, right? So it's very interesting that you have someone like Dan Bongino, who was sort of a champion of the alt media for a while, admittedly on the right, but a guy who was like, you know what, he came across as a straight shooter, give us the real deal. He gets in there and he says, nothing to see here. And then when he does have the chance, he just blacks out anything important and then says, okay, here you go. And who censored it? Him and his teams, according to my research, allegedly. I really don't know. I have anything against him as a person. I just think that he probably was, maybe got in over his head, and someone in the power structure was like, you're going to do it like this. And that guy is a law enforcement guy, ultimately somewhat of a soldier, was with the Secret Service, and they probably gave him an order, and it was not unclear, and he just executed. That's how it seems to me. So that's sort of the first glance at this. Now, is there disgusting things in there? Yes, but that's really not what I'm here to do. You can go through, and you're certainly welcome to look at some of the disgusting things that are there. So can you go through there? Yes, it's a messy process. You have to open the files individually, view them by data set, limited search. These things are PDF scans of handwritten images. They're not text searchable. You can see emails, photos, logs, transcripts, if you are so inclined. All right. And there's a lot of other ins and outs that sort of get mixed up in this. The whole Savannah Guthrie mom's getting kidnapped, and her husband working for a PR firm that did damage control for the Clintons. There's all these things get very convoluted. Now, here's another thing. This is something that I've mentioned before. Okay, stick with me here because this goes into a little bit of weirdness. So I want you to think about this. Very often in these high-level media narrative stories, we have these odd occurrences where things that are unrelated are almost parallel. Okay, now I think this is the paranoid conspiracy theorist in me, but it seems like they do that to mentally mess with your mind. Let me give you an example. Who are two of the players that are involved in this situation? The girl who said she wouldn't kill herself, but did, and who was one of the most vocal critics of Epstein from the early days, and then died by suicide after saying that she wouldn't do that. That girl's name was Virginia Guthrie. Now, who's the woman whose mother just got kidnapped? Savannah Guthrie, right? Do you find that a little odd? Virginia, a place, and Guthrie. And then Savannah, also a place, and Guthrie. 2 letters separate those names, last names, and both of their first names are a location in the South. It just makes the whole thing confusing. And I've talked about that before. Now, there's no way that Savannah Guthrie or whatever could be, go back and change her name and it's like a Mandela effect. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is who gets selected to be the victim in this broader narrative as things unfold to distract us. And if it's a woman whose name is so weirdly related to someone else that that has had something tragic happen to her in the light of all this, why not? Right? I don't know. I'm not saying that's true, but isn't it a little weird? That's all I'm saying. So if you want to go check it out for yourself, you can go to the Department of Justice and you can find their database. And it's really just noise in the end, right? It's a document dump. There's people in there, yeah. There are people that we know that are in there, and they're saying some very questionable things. And then there's some really gross stuff that I'm not going to go into. So there's that. That is the news cycle of sort of what's happening around that. My humble sort of assessment of it, and it is bananas. Okay, I don't know if there's a clear answer or what we get out of this, but we asked for it and we got it, right? We all wanted to see the documents. We saw them. Bongino and his team went in there and black magic markered out anything of any importance to whoever those people are that are blacked out must be more important than Deepak Chopra and Bill Gates. That's all I can surmise, right? Okay, so just give me 1 second here, and we're going to jump to our next section. All right. Now, I had originally entitled this episode as the Epstein Docs and Nancy Guthrie and Bad Bunny. I don't know to what degree we need to go into Nancy Guthrie. I kind of covered what I wanted to cover. That was my intention. That was what I was sort of planning to do, is draw those connections, which we may have done. Let's see. I did see on the news yesterday that they have the ring cam footage of the guy that kidnapped her, but it's really nothing. You can't see much because the guy's disguised with a ski mask on and he comes up with a backpack, and I don't know. All it's a tragic thing. I hope the lady gets home safe. That's all I can say about that. But we will kind of rewind here, okay? I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. So here's another thing. Right, one more little caveat. Two more things on the Epstein file document dump. this is an article from CTV, and they're all these sort of Reuters, pulled documents. So all these articles, no matter what the news source, they're all kind of the same. So these are the lists that you'll find if you, at the end of a keyword search for like who are the powerful people named in the Epstein files, right? If you want to go look. So what's interesting is they will throw out things like Andrew Montbatten Windsor. So that's the former Prince Andrew. Okay, so he's in there. Elon Musk. So Elon Musk discussed going to Epstein's island with Epstein. According to him, he never did, and according to the logs, he never did. But he said he turned down the disgraced financiers request, and according to him, repeatedly. Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I refused. But his name is in there because of that. So that just shows you the level of which they will go to connect someone they want to, and then they will even go so far as to take a black magic marker to disconnect someone that they want to from this, as I so eloquently put earlier, mess. All right? So he's in there. Richard Branson, okay, another billionaire. Easy to throw shade on. And is he a great guy, or is he a crook, or is he a longtime associate? Yes. He said, like, anytime you're in the area, I would love to see you as long as you bring your harem. That's a quote from Richard Branson in a note to Epstein. So, right, a little bit damning. What's going to happen to him because of it? Nothing. Stephen Tisch, the New York Giants co-owner, mentioned more than 400 times in the documents. Okay? That's a lot. And I'm just going to go through there, and I'm going to give you my sort of my opinion about this situation. Brett Ratner, he's a film director, recently released a Melania Trump documentary. He's in multiple photographs and files, and sort of, he's right there with the rest of them, right? Casey Wasserman, very handsome, sort of Summer Olympics chairman committee in LA. Multiple emails with Ghislaine Maxwell, very flirty, as the news article describes. Here's one. In 2003, Wasserman wrote to Ghislaine Maxwell, "I think of you all the time, so what do I have to do to see you in a tight leather outfit?" Okay, these are the kinds of, like, trying to be naughty, like, weirdo stuff that the high level elites just think is so clever. It always cracks me up. And so then what happens is you get into this long list of a bunch of people who are arguably famous, but that no one knows. Like Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel. He is in there a lot. Howard Lutnick, of course, arguably, more famous or infamous. Former Sergey Brin, the billionaire Google co-founder, made plans to meet with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell at his townhouse in New York. This is a person who was publicly accused of sexually abusing underage girls, and so this guy knew it. I'm saying Epstein was, not Sergey Brin. So anyway. It's just there all these, like, okay, Steve Bannon, yes, he's in there. Miroslav Lajak, he's a national security advisor to the Slovakian prime minister. So you see what I'm saying? These guys, yes, are they okay? Could you say that Miroslav Lajak, the security advisor to the Slovakian prime minister, is a famous person? Okay, arguably maybe, but he's not like Brad Pitt, right? And so I think that what's happening here is these mainstream media outlets are cherry picking the people from here that no one cares about. They're always going to throw Musk under the bus. They're always going. It's easy to pick a techie giant that no one knows. It's easy to pick some Slovakian assistant to the interior or whatever. And then you have these high level finance, guys or billionaire sort of philanthropic, like, business guys like Stephen Tisch, whatever. So these are they famous? Maybe in some regard. Are they household names? No. Are household names in there? Yes. Okay. So it's interesting what shows up in the news, and what's equally interesting is what doesn't show up in the news. Now, those people who are in there, who we do know, who are household names and who are being called out, they are playing this I didn't know card, right? Time and time again. The script is the same. Just because I was there doesn't mean I'm guilty of anything wrongdoing. Now, arguably that's true, right? I take them at their word. I don't know. The whole thing is a disaster. But when you have like Ellen DeGeneres and she's got a picture of her of Epstein's, like that weird building that's on his island in the background of her set on her talk show for multiple times for years. It's just, is that not a little weird? Does she think the guy's so great, but she also doesn't know a thing about what he does? I don't know if many people are buying that. I'm not sure. I'm not. But then again, I don't know what she does or doesn't do. So not. It opens up these things. Okay, and this leads me, and if you recall, I said earlier, two things. So that was one. Here's the other one. All right. And this is a doozy. All right. We're just gonna open this. Just give me a second. It's just something I discovered that maybe you didn't know. So it's gonna take me a second to open it because I want to get the information right. Epstein owned a ranch in, let's see, where was it? I think it was in Arizona. Maybe Oklahoma. That sounded like a country song, did it not? Okay. Okay, wrong. It was in New Mexico. So he owns a huge ranch, $50 million piece of property that's like a huge compound and a lot of property, and it looks like a resort. So that's just one of his pads that he had. The name of the trust which he set up to own that property, that's a common thing for people to do, wealthy people in particular, because it removes them and it from a lot of the tax burden, is particularly when you're giving property from one person to another, or the sort of inheritance, that kind of thing. So it's a common thing to establish valuable assets into a trust. So the trust owns the asset. The trust in this case, which owns his New Mexico property, is called Zorro Trust. Zorro Trust was also the trust that claimed an $80 million winning lottery ticket in New Mexico. It says, let's see, this was a Powerball ticket that was purchased in Oklahoma. Okay, hello, does that sound suspicious to you? Now, what the official story is, because I dug through the whole thing, is that someone else, some unrelated woman, won the Powerball, and that she set up a trust to maintain her anonymity, and she just so happened to name her trust the Zorro Trust, which was the same name as the legal entity tied to Epstein's sprawling New Mexico estate. But I would think that would maybe be prohibited if you were setting up a trust in the same territory as another trust with the same name. I really don't know. Maybe not. But even if it isn't, and there's no guardrails that would stop that or that would red flag it, it still stretches the imagination to think that that's pure coincidence and that he had nothing to do with it, especially since, the after-tax amount of that $80 million Powerball ticket equals exactly the value of the ranch. So he could have just with one fell swoop paid the ranch off. Okay, that's all I'm saying is that's a fact, that someone claimed a ticket that was a $80 million Powerball ticket under the same trust name as the trust that Epstein had, and it's listed underneath like an email which was from let's see, where is it? Oh, redacted. The subject, Jeffrey Epstein. The original message, Wednesday, September 30th, 2009. Some interesting facts that should be passed on to the investigative agent on the Epstein case. I will also copy Director Mueller. So here are the facts in the email. 1, Zorro Trust, belonging to Epstein, won an $80 million lottery ticket in New Mexico. 2, Zorro Ranch, belonging to Epstein, sits close to the U.S.-Mexican border, where most trafficked children are rooted prior to being dispersed to the East Coast. 3, several high-ranking officials and friends of Epstein have confirmed he has sexual relations with trafficked underage minors. 4, both Ghislaine Maxwell in New York and Redacted were served last week. 2 key witnesses on Epstein's camp. Thank you. The end, sent by Redacted. So this isn't saying maybe, right? This is an email that was sent to the Department of Justice, or is sent to Redacted, someone who at least some high level passed on to the investigative agent on the case. That's its hopeful recipient. And it says clearly Zorro Trust belonging to Epstein, not Zorro Trust belonging to some random woman who happened to name her thing the same thing as Epstein. No. That's not what it says. It says absolutely Zorro Trust belonging to Epstein won an $80 million lottery ticket in New Mexico. Right there, black and white. Doesn't mean it's true, but it is something to think about, and it does seem a little rich that they would say, oh no, that was just someone else who won that. Okay, then who? Where is she? No one can find her. It's just crazy. All right, so that would be the end of the Epstein file, unauthorized, unscripted drama dive. So thanks for going through it. There's so much there. There's so much to go through. You know, I mean, you could spend a lifetime going through it, and to what end, though? To what end? Giddy up if you want to. Go ahead. And, you know, could I do a better job of trying to analyze some of the characters there and pull up some of those things that throw shade on people we know? Absolutely. Except that, to be perfectly honest, it becomes very discouraging when you're reading these sort of what is ultimately sad things. So let me close this down, and we will go into what's going to be the second part and the last part of this presentation today, which is Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl. Ooh, controversial. I have to open my bookmarks here. Now, I'll start out by saying I had heard the name of that artist a couple times here and there. I'm sure he's great. I don't really know. I'm not a huge football expert. I like to watch some college football. You know, it's not my whole life. I'm not one of those guys that knows every statistic and watches every game and bets on the Super Bowl and like what color Gatorade they're going to throw on the guy. You know, it's just not something that I'm interested in. It doesn't mean I'm against it, right? It's bread and circuses for the masses is what it is. And if it's your brand of entertainment, and yes, football can be fun, and the sport is cool, but what we get with the Super Bowl is probably the most removed from the sport that sport ever gets. And what's happened is, over the years, these large companies have infiltrated have become the entertainment industry, in other words. And so at a very high level, they have their hands in everything. So you have, you know, all the guys at the top of the big entertainment companies, that's who choose who's going to be at the Super Bowl. I just actually read that. So let me go back, because I don't want to say the wrong name here. So today, the process of selecting who the halftime show act is shaped by the NFL's partnership with Jay-Z's entertainment company, Rock Nation, and that's ROC. Established in 2019, the collaboration made Rock Nation the NFL's live music entertainment strategist, giving Jay-Z influence over performer selection. This partnership plays a significant role in the planning and production of the Super Bowl halftime show. And that's from IB Times in the UK. All right. And they're pretty reputable, and I'll take them at their word. So recent halftime performers include Shakira and J-Lo. That was 2020. Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, 2021. That was The Weeknd. 2022. That was the Eminem Dr. Dre thing where they rebuilt the East LA, and that was kind of cool. And then on and on. So then we have 2026 Levi's Stadium, Santa Clara, California, Bad Bunny featuring Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, and Los Planeros de la Cresta. So that's basically what we have, and who picks it. Now, I would probably go so far to say that it is quite possible that Jay-Z and his Rock Nation has some financial interest or some promotional interest or some ancillary motive for putting Bad Bunny in the Super Bowl. It would only make sense. I'm not going to look into it to find out. But, for all I know, he's on his label, and that's neither here nor there. That's not the issue. I just wanted to know, how does that get done? So now we know. So the issue is that International Business Times called this in their headline the worst halftime show ever. Why critics, including Trump, are calling out Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance. All right. So I'm not here to say I'm not a music critic. I lived in West Palm Beach for a long time. I've grown up in Florida. I definitely have a lot of friends who speak Spanish. I definitely try my best to speak Spanish when I'm in that community or when I'm in those environments. The people who do speak Spanish appreciate the effort, and it seems like you can go along to get along a little bit. The last thing I am is racist. I love America because of the melting pot. I care about the person, not where they're from, right? That's just how I am. If you speak Spanish, then rock on. But the idea that someone is annoyed because the Super Bowl performance is only and entirely in Spanish, the idea that is a racist sort of position, to me, is a little much. It's a little far. It isn't. What if it was in German? And I was like, man, that's annoying that it's in German. Am I a racist now? It's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. And I want to bring up one sort of article here. I'm not going to dive so deep into it because in the end it's just opinion. The Bad Bunny Super Bowl performance. All right. It's sort of the elephant in the room, and I'm going to forego digging through a bunch of documents and reading a bunch of quotes, and we all have heard them. So what's interesting to me is that if you go through the places we all look for our news these days, YouTube comments and shady blog posts, right? What you find is pure division. You have a whole camp that says that was the greatest thing I've ever seen, right? You have people saying, I don't speak Spanish and I couldn't understand a word, but I loved every second of it because it was so energetic and beautiful and heartfelt. I don't know. That to me is like the sort of, there's a lot of ways to look at it. So the other side is worst I've ever seen. I don't speak Spanish. I couldn't understand it. Why would they do that? The whole thing is silly. Now, if you recall, I think J-Lo put some Spanish into her sort of halftime show. The point is, regardless of where you stand on what you imagine the Bad Bunny's halftime performance to be, good, bad, or indifferent, the fact is, you can't deny that from the outside, if you had no clue and you just landed here from another planet, like many of my listeners may have, you would be in a situation where, to look at that objectively, you would say the only reason to do that isn't, it's ironic because on the surface it's like we're doing this to bring everyone together, but really what it's doing is division. And so we see that theme again and again and again. And the way is when the racism card is played before any racism even enters the chat. Okay? Perfect example. If you say man, I'm all for the halftime show, but I couldn't understand it because I don't speak Spanish. Bink, racist. That isn't necessarily a racist statement. If you said, man, I'm not even going to give you an example. You can use your imagination. There's a million versions of a racist statement about what that halftime show was, or anything. There's a million things that could be viewed through the lens of racism and critically as such. However, saying, man, I didn't understand it because I don't speak Spanish, that's not a racist statement. It's just a statement of fact of how bilingual someone is not. Okay? I grew up in South Florida. I try to speak Spanish. I can a little bit. And if someone asks me in South Florida, can you speak Spanish? I just say, poquito solamente, which means a little bit only. Like, I can find the bathroom, I can get a beer, and I can tell you that my record player is in the kitchen. But you know what I mean? Right? I took high school Spanish. So, I have that level of it. I love it. The multiple cultures in the world are what make the world great. And so I'm all down for that. And, Puerto Rico, if that's where he's from and that's his jam, and they decide that they want him in the Super Bowl, it's fine with me. But don't act like presenting the Super Bowl in a language that only a small percentage of the people watching can understand is a way to bring people together. Don't even come at me with that, right? Because I'm not buying it. I think it was designed to be divisive, and mission accomplished. Now, does he say in the end, love conquers all, and he says it in Spanish or whatever the phrase was? Yes, I get it. But you can't deny that overall, the effect is division. And when you're talking about the most valuable media minutes in the world, that you can't say that the results they achieve are not by design. So if they achieved division, then the goal was division. Did it bring us all together, and we all are taking Spanish classes now and going to see our Spanish neighbor? And maybe, but it's a stretch to imagine. I think that these things are done for certain reasons at certain times, and when you're not talking about somebody performing in the park down the street after the town hall's picnic. You're talking about the Super Bowl halftime show. Going into that from the beginning, it takes months to develop that. You can imagine, it was the stage setting and all that. Very impressive. This isn't something that happens overnight. This isn't something that gets accomplished on a whim. This is something that is delivered to the masses at a time when you have all of their attention. If you're ever going to have the slow death rattle of television aside, right? If there's an audience, that's it. So what you give that audience is the result of a long process of decision making and activity. So there's no way that they did not anticipate some form of sort of divisionary backlash. Now, I really don't have any skin in the game. I like football. I'm not an expert on football. I like to watch some college ball, in the season. But I'm certainly not glued to my TV and can't wait for the Super Bowl and like all of that. Matter of fact, I didn't even know it was the Super Bowl until someone told me like 3 days before. So, okay, it's not something that's on my radar. Although I do understand the value of the media property, and you can't tell me that the result of what gets displayed is not the end result of a long history of development. It's not something that just gets thrown up there. So the fact that it's packaged as love and bringing us together, but its effect is division and arguing and firing people because they said that they don't think it should have been in Spanish. Like, all of those results are, in my humble opinion, part of the process. Okay, the fallout of that part of the process. Is it a distraction from the Epstein files? Well, it certainly is a timely debacle if it isn't. Now, personally, nothing against the guy. Catchy, sure. I know a little bit of Spanish. If he was singing a rap song about, ordering beer and finding the bathroom, then I would I would follow right along. But I don't think that's what he was saying. So anyway, those are opinions. They're not necessarily any kind of groundbreaking thing. I have nothing against him as an artist. I have all the respect for the all varieties of Latin American culture, Latin culture, Spanish influence. We all live in sort of the same world and, well, the same planet, let's just say. But me being from Florida, we are the melting pot. We have residents here from all points. People come here from the Caribbean. They come here from Europe. They come here from, Spanish countries. They come here from Mexico. They come here from New York. Believe me when I tell you. They come here from the Northeast seaboard and all points. Every time I meet someone who isn't someone I know, they just moved here. Okay? The population of Orlando, okay, that amount of people move to this state every year. And they're from all points. So, you know what it does? It makes the vibe cool. We have influence of, Caribbean cuisine, and we have, Cuban music, and we have all versions of this sort of very rich culture that other places don't have, because we are such a melting point. Where people come and go from in the United States, in a large part. It brings its share of problems. Watch an episode of Miami Vice, from back in the day. But it also brings far much more good than bad. This situation of, I say okay a lot. I notice it. Well, let's try to not do that. All right. Anyway, these types of things, these big watershed moments, these controversial situations, that you have to take them with a grain of salt when they come from such an outrageously mainstream source as the NFL and the Super Bowl and NBC Sports, or wherever the heck, Rock Entertainment, Jay-Z. These are very large organizations with very high level agenda. Beware. That's all I'm saying. And here's the other point. The other point is this, that just because something naturally has a division and you could either be for it or against it, because it's so easy, that doesn't mean that is everyone's position, either or. Case in point, talk to your friend and ask him, what do you think? Have a conversation about it. In the real world, what you will probably find, just as I have, is that most people sort of have these wishy-washy, kind of both sides of the thing, opinions about it. My friend Camilo, who speaks Spanish, he's from Spain, very quick to tell you, loved it. Cool. My friend who is from North Carolina and has never met a Spanish person, not so much. But that doesn't mean that he's a racist because he didn't like it, because he couldn't understand it. It just means that his language facilities are limited, and it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like I said earlier, what if it was in German, right? What if it was in Cantonese? You're going to have some people that can't understand it. So just voicing the fact that, well, I didn't understand it, doesn't make you a racist, right? It doesn't. Enough of that. Now, here's the other thing. Very rarely do I go down these roads on the podcast. And I'll tell you why. Because really all it does is just create more discontent. And, I'm about getting along and going along. I'm about the weird stuff. What's weird about this to me is that how big and splashy and sort of controversial it was. Like, it hit the ground running. And it comes at a time where we just got like 3 million documents that maybe we should be worried about a little more. I don't know. It's interesting. So, I think that this format of show is fun to do. It's cool for me to just like dump on you, and I appreciate you listening. It's cool to take a look at some things in a freewheeling way, because as you relax, then sort of these ideas come to you, and it's very interesting and it's fun, and it's another way to do it. I've done shows like this before, and some better than others. And so anyway, a few little housekeeping things before we move on here. Number one, if you are a Patreon on the Patreon page, an RFA agent, thank you so much. If you've ever thought about joining, you can do it for free for a week. Jump in there. You can just go to patreon.com/Renegade Files, or you can find a link in the show notes. It's the way I finance this show. It's one of those things that it's sort of a necessary evil because it costs money to live in the world. It costs money to make this podcast for you. And if you can kick in a little bit, you can crowdfund by a little bit of everyone else coming together and adding up and making a big difference to me. For less than you tip a pizza guy, you can jump into the RFA agency and make a huge difference to me. That's it. If you want to follow the show, go to whatever application you're using, find how you follow the show, click follow. That means a lot too, because the more people that follow the show, the more people the show gets shown to, and then my efforts go further. That's all. It isn't for an ego trip thing, you know. I don't care what the numbers are. I want to reach the people that want to consume what I do. All right. Now, I have a few other little things I want to share with you. Number one, I'm considering starting a new podcast, and it's going to be really down and dirty and really unedited and unscripted. And my hope is that I would have a guest and we would talk about whatever topics we pick. I don't really know if that is a good idea or a bad idea. It's just something I am kicking around on the far back burners of my mind. I don't have a plan. I don't have a date. I don't have an agenda. I just have this sort of backish idea that maybe that would be fun. The people that I've talked to are down with it, but that's also a very easy thing to say yes to and a harder thing to follow up on and actually accomplish. So we'll see. If I do get it off the ground, you'll be the first to know. So there's a few other things that I want to go into here before I let you go, and that is, let me see here. I want to say thank you to everyone who listened to the Ghost Hunt episode at the May Stringer House. Don't be shy and go back to that episode and vote whether you think I was right or Agent Sheila Stone was right about the EVP. I got 2 votes so far, but an easy place to vote is in the comment section of YouTube or in the comment section of Spotify. Both of those, easy and painless. So go back, check that episode out if you haven't. It's doing great. It was really fun. It was also unscripted in a lot of ways because we recorded our ghost hunt. I had mentioned in that we're going to do the next one in St. Augustine, and that's true. I want to say jump into our Substack. You can find it by going to Substack and searching for Renegade Signals. That's the name of the Substack, and there's tons of fun things in there, and it's all free. So it's just more content for free that I make for you because I am a maniac and you love it. So go check it out. Let's see. Let's look and see what are our ideas for the coming future. So I have some notes here of some things that I've thought about doing, topics for the show. I want to get back into doing some heavily researched deep dives. We've done a few recently and they've been good and well received, and it's something that's like a return to form, something I like to do. We're going to do the St. Augustine ghost hunt and ghost stories, but that's not going to be until the spring sometime. So we did the 2-part Roswell thing. So there's a few things that I have on my list. A demonology episode where I dive into the work of John Zaffis. I don't know if there's a lot of, let's just say, concrete research to do there. A lot of that's opinion, but a lot of it's also very creepy. Maybe we'll save that for Halloween time, which, I say that now and everyone's like, Halloween? Yeah, dude, time flies. It'll be here before we know it. I think there's an episode in the Watergate scandal that, we get into this history where, are we rehashing stuff that a lot of people have already gone over? Well, in a way, but there's also this, as far as Watergate goes, this Cord Mayer, JFK and his wife, Alan Dulles, the sort of Philip Graham kind of, there's a lot going on there. There's weird things, right? There's like, just, it is not. Okay, let me just put it this way. What happened there is not what the mainstream spun it as, right? There's a lot more going on there, and I think it warrants some going into. And if for nothing else, for the listener who loves history and unraveling the real story as opposed to the cut and dried cookie cutter sort of Woodward and Bernstein kind of like, okay, so for example, who were those guys, right? What did they do? They're a brand new up and comer. They've never worked on a story before, and they land like the biggest scoop ever. That's sort of a Hollywood like dream cliche. That isn't really how things happen. And when you do start to dig into who they were, it unravels another rabbit hole that I don't think a lot of people have really explored, and it's worth exploring. So let's just say, bookmark that. We'll do a Watergate episode. It'll be fun. We'll dive into it, and we'll learn a lot together. There's this, another one on the back burner is occult symbolism of Hollywood deaths. That ties into the Laurel Canyon thing. It ties into Manson. It ties into like a long list of these sort of very odd, very strange, very contrived, sort of out of the blue kind of like darkness of Hollywood, which I think is maybe a timely sort of episode. So maybe let's just highlight that as like yellow, maybe coming up. The Watergate thing too. And so then beyond that, we have this CERN/Mandela effect thing. I've mentioned it so many times that I get so upset by the Mandela effect because I have a good memory. And one guy in one of the comments said, there's no such thing as a photographic memory. Okay, I don't know all the nomenclature. All I know is that I remember every single thing of every single day that ever happened to me back to when I was 3 years old. So you can call that what you will. And so because of that, the Mandela effect really upsets me. All right. Because I know what I know in a lot of ways. And it's not that, oh, I remembered the name of a book I had wrong. That isn't the case with me. It might be the case with another person. But the other thing is, it also isn't the case with 100 million people online that we all remembered it wrong. That's BS. There's something else going on there. And one reason it bothers me is I can't figure out what it is. Okay? I really don't know. It's a disturbing topic, but for you, I'll go into it. I just haven't done the emotionally difficult work of doing it. You'll be the first to know, like I said. Another one that I will go into, a huge topic that, kind of has fallen out of favor recently, and maybe this should be the one, is crop circles. So you can look for that. And then I'm going to do JFK. I keep saying it. I've got it outlined into 3 parts. Part 1, the shooting, the day of, Oswald's actions, the official story there, and his arrest. Part 2, Oswald, who was he, his history, connections, Russian defection, his return to the U.S., the prior year or 2 activities leading up to the shooting. And then Part 3, the Warren Report, the people involved, the Kennedy enemies, the deep cover-up, Fletcher Prouty, Jim Garrison, Jim Mars, Oswald's illogical, unlikely actions, the aftermath, where are we today because of the JFK shooting. Those are timely, even though it's been talked about ad nauseum. The no matter what, there's a reason that people keep coming back to that. It's the OG conspiracy theory. It's the one that got me involved with at least looking at things in a different way at a very young age. So that topic, even though people have talked about it, it warrants a visit because it affects us to this day. And I think I've got the outline. I think I've got the structure. I've done a ton of the research. I've read books till I'm dizzy on the subject, and it's just a matter of putting it together for you in a way that makes sense and delivers the material in this logical progression. So that's my goal. As for the PBE, which are the Patreon bonus episodes, I'm going to do a dive on John Gotti and the Charlie Red Star UFO phenomenon, and you can only get those as Renegade Files agent on Patreon. So for all you patrons, RFA agents on Patreon, look for those episodes, bonus episodes coming your way soon. I'm working on both of them right now. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. That was pretty cool. It was fun. It was different, and I hope that you liked it. I want to wish you the best of luck. I want you to do your thing, stay wild, have fun, dig deep. This is a crazy world. There's a lot of things changing, but you know what? When things change, that's when the good stuff happens, is it not? So let me just open this file here. You're getting a look behind the curtain. How does he do it? He clicks around on the computer all day until his butt's sore from sitting in the chair. Wow, sounds fun. The last things that I want to say are tap follow if you're following the show. Good. Send it to your friends. If you're not following, it takes 2 seconds. Tap follow. If you're listening on YouTube, click subscribe, hit the bell, all the stuff those guys say. Smash that like button, whatever. Anyway, and this show is actually, there's a video version of it too. So you can go check the video version out on YouTube. There will also be the audio version only of this show because it gets uploaded automatically. And I don't know, maybe I'll delete the audio version and just have this one be up there as a video. I think it might be good to not have repetition for the algorithm, although I don't chase it too hard. I don't want to full on mess it up either. So either way, I'm going to put the video version in the Patreon page, so the Patreons will see the video version regardless of how I code it on YouTube. If you enjoyed these episodes and you want to help me keep this independent show going, then join the RFA agency on Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. It costs almost nothing, and that little bit of a nothing adds up with a little bit of nothing from a lot of people, and it means a huge deal to me. So thank you if you're already in there, and thank you if you've ever thought of doing it and you jump in there today. I can't wait to see you in there, and a high five to everyone who already is. One more thing that I want to say as we get to the end here is I've been doing a lot of work on the Renegade Files merchandise store, trying to flesh out the brand, as it were, and that can be accessed by going to the website at therenegadefiles.com and clicking on the button that says Shop, and it'll take you to the page where you can jump right into the Renegade Files store. All of that stuff is priced to be fun. The shipping, you know, I know that you have to absorb that, so I try to make the price to where you come out of there feeling good and you get some cool Renegade Files stuff. I have, right now, we have, t-shirts, 2 different designs. We have a long sleeve t-shirt, a sweatshirt. We have 2 glass pint glasses for your craft beer and a hat, and all the stuff very tasteful, very cool, very fun, priced to be fun to buy. So check that out. You can also find a link to the shop in the show notes, or as I said, at therenegadefiles.com, where you can just press the shop button and it'll take you right to the store. So we're going to be adding things to that as we go along. I've been working on it for a long time, and my goal is to build Renegade Files into a full-on paranormal lifestyle brand. No one is really doing it. You know, I'd mentioned to my fearless friend, Agent Sheila Stone, that, you know, when you look up alien clothes, you find a bunch of Hawaiian shirts with aliens smoking weed on them. But you don't really find anything that's like really serious sort of paranormal branded accessories and clothing. And I think that Renegade Files just itself as a brand fills that gap. It's not only aliens, it's all the weird stuff. And that's what's cool. It's like the collective of the Fortean world. Renegade Files, go get some crazy merch and represent the weird world of Renegade Files. Thank you so much. Do it. So that's it for the store, my little ad. I am so glad to have you in the Renegade Files crew. So until next week, you know me, I'm your host, Lex Gordon. Thanks again for listening. Stay wild, hypnotic child.